Even giants are dwarfed by the mighty Okavango. The elephants enjoy one of the world's largest wetlands, 15,000 square kilometers of wild paradise. Only from above can the scale be fully appreciated. Through a network of watery veins, life-giving waters course to every corner of the delta and support some of the world's most spectacular big game. If you want an African adventure, no other destination comes close. There are few places on Earth that can provide such an ultimate journey as Botswana. Scientists pore over this unique landscape, eager to reveal its secrets. And who better as a guide, at the forefront, water ecologist Mike Murray-Hudson.
The Okavango Delta that we're in now is the bottom end of a very big river system. The catchment is in Angola, and seasonal rain falling in Angola in the catchment gets concentrated down into the Okavango River, which flows through Namibia and ends up in Botswana, spreading out again.
This is the key to its richness. To reach the delta, water must flow from its source in central Angola, traveling over 1,000 kilometers before irrigating the Okavango. In June and July, this incoming water fills the delta to its brim.
Of the water that comes in at the top, perhaps 2% or so, a very small proportion, leaves at the bottom. The rest is lost to evaporation, which is what keeps all this lush vegetation growing.
Reeds, grasses and papyrus dominate the vegetation, towering around 2 meters above the water. Mike's research focuses on how massive influxes of sediment carried by the water shape the landscape.
An equally important part of the natural processes that happen is the incoming sand, the sediment, build up the channels and cause the distribution of water to change from area to area over the course of centuries.
For the inhabitants, the network of submarine roads is constantly shifting, shaped and reshaped by the coming and going of sediment. It's not just silt that shapes the reeds. Constant cropping by mouths a meter wide keeps the vegetation in check. The 4-ton hippos have an impact on their environment to match their colossal bulk. This passing of wide loads helps keep the waterways open. The Okavango is a refuge, one of the greatest havens left for Africa's big game. And nowhere is this more apparent than in the Moremi Game Reserve, which, at nearly 5,000 square kilometers, covers a third of the delta. This is a safari hotspot. Largely safe from hunting, even huge and dangerous herds of buffalo can be approached for a close-up. The famous Big Five are the elephant, rhino, lion, and leopard. But none are more dangerous than the buffalo. Even experienced rangers are wary of these unpredictable wild cattle. Their horns are very robust and can be fatal. Buffalo live in large herds of tens of thousands of individuals. The bulky 700-kilo bulls dominate the hierarchy, while the females are organized among themselves, following older, more experienced herd members. Older animals flank the herd, keeping smaller and more vulnerable ones behind a wall of muscle and horns. "90% of Botswana's 90,000 buffalo live here in the Okavango. Often infested with ticks, lice and fleas, they provide constant food for their smaller neighbors. Here are 2 age-old enemies, surprisingly well matched. Lions are among the largest and most powerful hunters on Earth, and moreover, they combine their strengths, hunting as a pride. Buffalo, on the other hand, have brawn and sheer numbers on their side. The outcome of an encounter is by no means certain. A group of lions can bring down an adult buffalo, but the great cattle are also well known for gouging lions. They especially attack and trample lion cubs, so this time the pride would be wise to keep their distance. When the lights go down on the plains, everyone must be on their guard. Spectacular electric storms can be common in the Okavango, and luckily for some, don't make the ideal conditions for hunting. Instead, the lions use the darkness to relax together. Lions often prefer to hunt in the twilight, but can be active day or night. However, most of their time is spent at a more leisurely pace, with around 20 hours of sleep every day. A pride is typically made up of a large, powerful male, a number of related females and their cubs, usually totaling around 20 animals. Although sleepy now, they are the top predators on the plains, and in time, these cats will have to face their ultimate foe. They must get their rest while they can. A fish eagle's view of the delta reveals its richness. Yet despite this majesty, there is a great threat that looms large. Plans are afoot in neighboring Namibia to dam a river that feeds the park. The idea is to generate electricity, but experts warn that the project would destroy everything we see here. Mike Murray Hudson works with colleague and guide John Cutter at the Okavango Research Centre, part of the University of Botswana. Together, they've spent years monitoring the region, building up a picture of how the dam could affect this complex ecosystem.
Often, if you construct a dam on a river that will result in the flooding of areas that haven't been flooded before, you get a big release of nutrients into the water. And this could result in a slug of nutrients coming downstream into the delta. Putting a big shot of fertilizer like this into the waters of the delta would have completely unpredictable results on a vegetation that has been mainly adapted to very low nutrient conditions.
This shot of fertilizer would encourage bacterial growth and lower water quality. Furthermore, the dam would restrict water flow, leaving parts of the delta to dry out completely. John is a 60-year-old bushman who's spent his entire life in the delta. He has an intimate knowledge of its maze of canals and lagoons. For him and other indigenous people, it's hard to imagine life without the wetlands. It would devastate humans and animals alike. If the dam goes ahead, change is guaranteed.
The panhandle, the part of the Okavango River that flows into the delta, will erode and sink down into its present riverbed. A possible result of this is that the overbank flooding that is such an important characteristic of the river will stop.
The so-called panhandle is best viewed from the air. Rivers form the handle as they merge on the border of Namibia. The pan is where they widen out to form the Okavango Delta. In this area, it's not just animals that enjoy the wealth. Most of the region's 100,000 people live in the Handle region and depend on the delta for food. These women harvest water lily bulbs, which are an important local vegetable. So far, UNESCO has not recognized the Okavango as a World Heritage Site, making it difficult for international experts to fight for its protection. They may not have the support of UNESCO yet, but they can count on the support of local people to back their work. Namibian authorities claim that the dam would have little impact on people living in the delta. Critics, on the other hand, are convinced that the electricity gained would be disproportionate to the devastating effects on the landscape. The canals and rivers of the area were at one time used for shipping all of the goods in and out of the region. At one time, Morocco's, the traditional wooden canoes, were made by hand, using skills that were passed from one generation to the next. Today, plastic paddles are more commonly used, meaning some traditions are at risk of dying out. Up until now, inaccessibility has largely protected the delta, but the coming of a dam could change the face of the Okavango forever.
This area was proclaimed a national park in 1967 to enhance tourism. The Bushmen that had been living here previously had to leave their villages. This started back in 1964. Tourism will only survive here if the wildlife stays. Everyone who lives in the delta depends on it. If the area is damaged, it will mean the end of the Okavango Delta.
If the dam project is realized, John and fellow guide Thapelo would lose their jobs and their way of life. Furthermore, the resettlement of a whole people will have been pointless. There is a real danger that bushcraft skills will be lost.
In earlier days, we were eating palm hearts as a delicacy, but someday soon, all this will be forgotten. Luckily, I still know how to deal with nature, and it tastes really good. It's delicious, very good. Good.
This is John and Thapelo's world. Vast, untouched nature, endless space, and herds of big game. Unlike other parts of Africa, migration is unnecessary here. There is always some part of the delta with a good water supply, so the animals can stay all year round. The lion pride continues to laze away the day. The dominant female, affectionately called Lizzie by researchers, keeps an eye on her family. Although most of them had an idle night, one female bears testimony to a buffalo encounter. Perhaps she tried to hunt alone. She needs around 5 kilograms of food a day, so will often try her luck. She didn't fare well, but as the pride begin to awake, the odds swing back in her favor. Both groups begin to size each other up. And, as if as one, the group rise, taking their cue from Lizzie. In lion society, it is mostly the lighter weight, more agile females that do the hunting. But to tackle this foe, they will need some careful planning. Lions coordinate their attacks and spend time trying to pick out a weak and vulnerable member of the herd. The buffalo become restless, perhaps sensing the trap, but so far they haven't seen their attackers. A single lion alone could not bring down an adult buffalo, but with the whole pride working together, their chances are good. They spread out to circle the herd. Younger lions flank their prey. It will be their job to launch the attack, scaring the buffalo towards the larger, more accomplished killers. They can only run fast over short distances, so need to close the gap between them and their prey. The buffalo are edgy. But some large bulls, perhaps overconfident, are left behind, just where the lions want them. The buffalo's companion returns and attempts to drive the pride off. But perhaps knowing it's already too late, the lions outnumber him 9-1. There's little he can do. The pride use their combined strength to try and pull him down from behind, avoiding the rapier-like horns. The bull begins to tire. The rest of the herd know it will soon be over. The buffalo's death is long and brutal, but he is finally subdued. Once he's down, Lizzie can get a firm hold on his throat and suffocate him. After a 20-minute battle, his struggles at last come to an end. Today, good table manners are displayed around the kill. With prey this size, there is plenty for everyone. But when prey is scarce, fierce battles can ensue over food, and a strict hierarchy must be followed. The male eating first, then the senior lionesses, leaving the youngest members of the pride to pick over the remains. Wildebeest and zebra are the preferred prey of lions. They're not as fleet-footed as antelope or as dangerous as buffalo. But lions are opportunists. Anything from a rabbit to an elephant can appear on their menu if the situation is right. Compared to other big cats, a single lion is a poor hunter. But teamwork enables them to dominate the food chain, giving even the buffalo a run for their money. The lions will eat as much as they can in one sitting before scavengers such as hyenas and vultures have a chance to steal from the kill. Only once their stomachs are stretched to capacity will the cat family finally rest. Lizzie's Pride is one of the last truly wild and free roaming groups of lions left in the Okavango. Back on the water, John and Thapelo are acting as guides to another regular visitor. Expert ornithologist Pete Hancock makes frequent trips to the reeds to follow his passion for birds. The Okavango is a birdwatcher's paradise. Over 400 species have already been recorded. To get to the birds, you need expert local knowledge. The best places to find them are deep in the reed beds, in areas with a constant water supply. Among the more conspicuous species are giants of the bird world, like yellow-billed and marabou storks. Pete suffered an attack of polio as a child and as a result has spent his life on crutches. But this does nothing to dampen his enthusiasm, especially when heading out to research his favorite bird. Studying as part of the Crane Working Group for BirdLife Botswana, Pete's interests focus mainly on the distribution of one very special bird. The elegant and striking wattled crane is one of the rarest birds in Africa, and most of the remaining population lives here in the Okavango Delta.
One of the reasons we're focusing on the wattled crane is because it's a very good indicator species, and it can tell you a lot about the health of the ecosystem, because it's one of the first birds to disappear from an area when there's any disturbance in the area or when there are any major ecological changes. There's a very clear correlation between wattled cranes and the hydrology of the delta. So, for example, any projects that take off water upstream of Botswana, or projects that change the distribution of water in the delta, these are likely to affect species like the wattled crane.
The delta population of wattled cranes has stabilized at around 1,200 individuals, and Pete and his colleagues work hard to keep their numbers up. Another important indicator species is the distinctive African fish eagle.
The African fish eagle is a symbol of the Okavango Delta. It's a typical wetland bird that's found around the lagoons, channels and floodplains of the delta. The population is quite substantial, and the birds breed here every winter in large trees. They build a huge stick nest, and unlike most eagles, they raise two chicks. There's no canism whereby the first hatched chick kills the second hatched chick. So every year when we do our survey, our bird survey, we count fish eagles as well.
Pete is fascinated by how birds perceive the world. To him, they share certain human characteristics. Unlike many mammals, they see in color, and they communicate by calling to each other. Pete loves the diversity of birds, but doesn't share this enthusiasm for other animals of the bush.
One of the hazards of bird watching in the Okavango Delta is the large number of elephants that one's likely to encounter. Elephants are not really my cup of tea. I'd much rather spend my time watching some of the more interesting birds that are found in the Delta.
Okay,
I see. Can I have a quick look with the binoculars, please, John? They seem to be doing some kind of a display there. Yes, I think later honeybird.
Honeybirds, or wood hoopoe, don't miss a trick. If they spot an intruder, they raise the alarm. The bobbing is aimed to intimidate and to keep territorial challengers at bay. Many consider the marabou an unattractive bird, with its bald head designed for digging into corpses. However, they're an important element of the ecosystem, clearing up waste and thriving in the lush wetlands. If the dam project in Namibia goes ahead, it will have a devastating impact on bird life in the Okavango, something that many scientists, including Pete, are fighting to avoid. Another winged dustbin soars overhead. Vultures are the cleanup crew, charged with waste removal. They can see and smell carrion from many kilometers away. This one has spotted a buffalo carcass, but it's not yet available for their cleanup operation. Lizzie and her pride have gorged to full capacity and now need to sleep off their meal. It's a good chance to recharge the batteries after the effort of the kill. The older lions feasted first, and while they sleep, the younger cats seem determined to try and fit in just a few more bites. Lions need to eat the equivalent of 5 kilograms of meat a day, but they're able to gorge feed in one sitting and may not need to hunt again for 5 or 6 days. This gives them more time to socialize and to sleep. Their prize has not gone unnoticed. These vultures, in this case white-headed, hang around like bald undertakers, waiting in the wings. It's all just too tempting, and gradually they creep closer and snatch at scraps. There's plenty left, but the lions don't seem willing to give it up just yet, and Lizzie tries to retrieve the spoils and take them into the shade. Despite the harassment from vultures, the lions of the Okavango are doing well, faring much better than other prides around Africa. Because of the continual supply of water, they never have to face the hardships of drought. The lions still have the daily struggles of a life in the wild, but have the perfect territory with food in abundance. You might think their future looks assured, but like so many other animals, their lives could be changed overnight by the construction of a dam. This is an oasis in the midst of the Kalahari Desert, a constantly changing landscape transformed by the influx of water, even the occasional earthquake. The tiny tremors redirect streams pushing water to a new corner of the delta. 11 billion cubic meters of fresh water pass through the Okavango every year, carrying with them a staggering 660,000 tons of sediment. Water is the landscape gardener here, an unstoppable force. Even the plants themselves can alter the delta's shape when combined with the flowing water, as our expert and guide Mike Murray Hudson is finding out. Working for the Harry Oppenheimer Okavango Research Center, he has already observed how landscape changes can be caused by the papyrus grass.
The papyrus forms the banks of the channels. We don't have hard river banks here. The banks are soft and permeable and formed by this plant, which keeps all of the sand in the channels and stops it from getting into the floodplain. The result of this is that the sand bottom channel and the papyrus gradually build themselves up as the water level rises. The papyrus grows to keep pace with the water level, and the bottom of the channel rises. In the end, the channel is elevated above its floodplains, and at some point in time, a bank may burst and redirect all the flow from the channel in a completely different direction.
Mike has witnessed the phenomenon firsthand and never tires of seeing nature's power in action. To him, it would be a travesty to lose this important area, one of the last places on Earth shaped by natural forces and not by human intervention.
1.5 hours till 11:30!
Came second last time.
Every September, floodwater brings a time of plenty, even to the drier corners of the region. At the city of Morn, it marks the start of a special event begun by honorary German consul Karl-Heinz Gimpel. It's the annual river raft race. All competitors are given just 3 hours to construct a raft out of whatever they can find. The first to reach the finish line is winner, although the real aim is just to make the journey, with both vessel and crew remaining in one piece.
There's 3 adults and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 children.
Fun for all the family.
Yes, I think I'll win.
I'm cutting now to make it short so that it can float nice.
On your mark! Get set! Go!
On Noel Strugnall's command, the rafts begin their perilous maiden voyages. It's not so much about winning as having fun, and with a bit of luck, staying out of the water. There are the inevitable casualties. The referee calls for a rescue. Half an hour later, and the speediest craft comes into sight, and after 34 hair-raising minutes, completes the race.
And the first people to cross the line were... Yeah! For you people that don't know.
Until fairly recently, the outskirts of the Okavango were barren. Only small, scattered communities of people making a living raising livestock. Now, the influx of water supports a thriving city. A proportion of Botswana's 1.6 million people now live in Morn. What was once just dusty villages is now a boom town, attracting ever more visitors. Because of its proximity to the life-giving Okavango and its inhabitants, it has been dubbed the safari capital of the world. Many of the people are Herero, originally from Namibia. Today, they mingle in a cosmopolitan environment where standards of living and of education continue to rise. Any traveller journeying through Botswana will find it a welcome taste of urban life after a week or two in the bush.
One, two, three, hello.
One of the highlights of the visit is to a power station. But a station like no other. Abandoned mid-construction, it has become a melting pot of culture. International crowds gather at trendy wine bars and take in the art.
So, 10 years ago, this place was supposed to become a power station, but that never happened. So a lot of artists from all over Botswana and even all over the world, they come here because they are attracted to this place because it's unique and original, and there's so much scrap metal that you can weld just anything. For example, like this spider here, made out of expanded mesh and pieces of a vehicle. It's an artist's dream here.
Musician Helena Forward hails originally from the UK, but has found a mecca here. The centrepiece is a bar made out of scrap iron, now a popular hangout. The restaurant too is always packed, especially when Helena and the band team up with local guitar legend Stiga Solo. They have created a sound as unique as their venue, so-called swamp sounds, a mixture of local Tswana folk songs and African rock. The power station pub is thriving, but it wouldn't be without Botswana's natural wealth. It is the wilderness that pulls the tourists in, and adventure.
Right, guys, leopard crawl. Hello, I'm Grant from Okavanga Guiding School. This is my brother Brent, and these are the people we're going to be training for the next 8 days.
First step, get kitted up.
What we try to train people to do is to learn the skills that it takes to become a good guide. A good guide is somebody who has both the knowledge to be able to read the bush, to read the signs, to use his eyes, his ears, his intuition, to be able to read the behavior of the animals, and the mechanical knowledge to fix a vehicle when it breaks down.
If you want to go into the bush, these two South Africans can teach you everything you need to know. A keen trainee, tourist Lawrence Drotsky, is put to the test.
I'm going to show you guys how to go through water in Africa.
It's not easy to get to grips with the four-wheel drive. Without adequate acceleration, he flounders. Brett comes to his aid. This could be a life-saving exercise, but for this crew, it's an adventure holiday, and nobody takes it too seriously. And to round off the day, a quick dip, trying not to disturb the locals.
All right, this is the target of a bull elephant. Ears open, ready for charge. Not between the eyes. What you're aiming for is here. This is your kill zone. You have a kill zone the size of my fist. Anything on the outside of that by 1 inch is a hit. Anything outside of that is a miss. Everybody get that? 2. Up. The rifle is now in walking position. Push forward, down, lift, and go.
Of course, this is an exercise in defense, not sport, but it can be a lot of fun. For Diane Jardine, a South African holidaying in Botswana, It's a new experience.
You actually get to stand behind a rifle. It was quite a thrill. It was quite exciting. Just being able to, just knowing that you can actually do it and not being afraid of the rifle, it was really good fun.
Lift up your weapon, look straight down the barrel and fire into the killing area of the elephant.
Go, go, go! Elephant's charging! It's charging! Go! Shoot!
It comes easier to some than others.
Well shot,
Don't like
well
that.
shot. Don't worry about it.
I did struggle a lot in several things. I guess I'm too much of a city person. But the guides were fantastic. Grant and Brent were just super patient and were always there to help out. And I've learned a lot, come out a better person, far more confident than when I started. The best part about it, I think, was walking the bush, listening to the sounds. It's a beautiful world out here.
Of course, the ultimate thrill for any safari is the wildlife itself. A face-to-face encounter with big game is hard to forget, and there are few places that can compete with Botswana for a wild experience. The country's diamond mines have made Botswana famous, but it's the living treasure that brings in the crowds. In the Delta, herd animals mix, a rich diversity of life. Zebras are just one of the 164 species of mammal living in Botswana, not to mention around 550 species of bird and 157 kinds of reptile, an animal lover's dream. Zebra and giraffe are frequent travelling companions. And smaller hangers-on follow the herds. Tiny oxpeckers disappear as they work over the giraffe's vast bodies, picking off ticks. Giraffes can stand 5.5 meters tall, tall enough to look over a double-decker bus. They rock back and forth as they walk to keep their high-flying center of gravity on a firm footing. As if they weren't tall enough, they can extend their reach with a 45-centimeter tongue, long enough to reach inside and clean their own eyes and ears, but used mostly for picking leaves. Their preferred food plant is the heavily armored acacia, but giraffes can pick their way around 10-centimeter thorns with their prehensile tongues and toughened lips. Giraffes are fickle companions, moving from one grazing partner to the next, rather than staying in fixed herds. But with around 6,000 giraffes in the Okavango, they rarely dine alone. Like many African animals, they're most active at dawn and dusk, reserving their energy in the hot midday sun. Our wild guides, enjoying a foot safari, stumble on a remarkable scene. Lizzie and her pride set their sights high this time and have brought down a giraffe. Although giraffes can defend themselves with kicks from their powerful hooves, lions do sometimes hunt them, especially in thick scrub where they can be taken by surprise. This is where newly acquired bush skills are really put to the test. The team approached downwind. They know not to make loud noises or sudden movements. They've learned to read the lion's behavior, to anticipate a potential attack.
It's over there. It's all over here now.
Approaching a pride with young cubs is especially risky, but with them well fed, it's the perfect chance to risk a close-up. Staying out in the open, in plain sight, they won't spook the pride. That's close enough. A privileged view of the wild in Botswana. Despite their close bonds, the pride often splits up, some individuals scouting for food, while others babysit the cubs. Some of the family moves into the shade, but Lizzie endures the sun, seemingly determined to keep vultures from the prize. For those who journey to the wilds of Okavango, the rewards are great. The vultures are getting more active, but backup returns to Lizzie's side. These cubs are only around 3 months old. They were born blind and helpless, and for the first 6 weeks were totally dependent on their mother's milk and protection. Encounters with solid food begins to fuel their enthusiasm for adventure and keeps visitors flocking to this wild corner of Africa. From just 15 months, the cubs will begin to experiment with hunting. Once they're 2 years old, they'll begin to fend for themselves, and for young males, that will mean time to leave home. Male lions preside over each pride, although their leadership rarely lasts more than a few years, when a younger, stronger challenger kicks them off the top spot. The cub practices a guttural roar that, as an adult, will carry 8 kilometers across the plains and will be used to proclaim territory. Even now, the call has the desired effect. Lizzie obeys, abandoning her spot in the shade and returning to the scorching sun to keep her cub company while he eats. The life of male lions is tough, most living only 10 years or so. Females can double this age, perhaps because their closely bonded society takes the pressure off. With lions, it's all about family. This cub is in good hands, well protected by his diligent mother and well fed by the pride. He should be able to enjoy this hospitality for several years to come. But can Lizzie's young family look forward to such a long reign? Throughout Africa, lion populations are decreasing as they lose land to human development. Waves of disease, such as tuberculosis, exacerbate the situation. Until now, they have found sanctuary in the Okavango. But now, the Namibia Dam project looms large, threatening even these healthy cats. For this reason, the Delta receives more and more visitors, hoping to play a role in its preservation. It sends a shiver through the spine of ecologist Mike Murray Hudson when he imagines the devastation such a dam could cause.
If we stop sediment coming down the Okavango River, we stop the natural process of channel building and switching. And the net result of that could be that these islands become completely toxic to plant life. So nothing will be able to grow on them. They'll end up being simply salt deserts.
Wide areas, once so rich, would be condemned, clawed back by the Kalahari to be drained of their life-giving waters.
This is the salt that accumulates on the islands in the permanently flooded part of the delta. And you can see that it's very difficult for any vegetation to grow under these kinds of conditions. This species of grass here is very salt tolerant, but it really doesn't make very good grazing. And after a while of continued salt extrusion, not even this grass can survive.
At the moment, the annual flooding washes out minerals, keeps check on the salt levels, and maintains the wildlife wonderland. It's on this natural cycle that millions of animals and plants depend. But the Okavango, jewel of the Kalahari, is in danger, and there can be no better reason to make it the destination of any ultimate journey. Growing tourism fuels the economy. Maybe it will be those adventurers bringing in foreign funds who hold the fate of Botswana in their hands. Tourists could keep this ultimate destination alive. The wild magic of Botswana.